Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really unique, a project that uses, get this, programming code to search for hidden numerical patterns inside the Quran. It's called the Mathani framework, and it asks a pretty huge question. So, can a modern tool, a simple piece of code, actually uncover a whole new layer of meaning in a sacred text that's over 1,000 years old? All right, let's dive in and see how this thing actually works. At its core, this whole project really gets at something deeply human. The search for order, for patterns, and for meaning in the world. We're just wired to look for connections, right? Whether it's in the stars or in nature, and this is just a modern take on that very ancient quest.
The whole thing is built around this one powerful idea, mathani. It's an Arabic term, and it roughly translates to divine repetition. The thinking is that key numbers, themes, even divine names are repeated throughout the text, not by accident, but in a very deliberate, structured way. And this script? It's designed to be a pattern hunter.
So for a quest this profound, you'd think they're using some kind of super advanced AI, right? Or maybe a massive cloud computing platform? Well, the reality is way simpler and honestly a lot more interesting.
That's right. The Mathani framework isn't some glossy, complicated app. It's a humble bash script. Now, if you're not familiar, that's basically just a set of commands you can run from a simple terminal window on pretty much any computer. It's totally open source, accessible, and that it's so low-tech is what makes this whole thing so fascinating.
Okay, before we go any further, there's one key term you gotta know, pola. Think of the pola as your starting point. It's the target number, the specific integer you want the script to investigate. Everything that happens next revolves around this one number. So, you've picked your pola, what happens now? Well, the script kicks into gear and runs that number through this whole analytical pipeline, breaking it down from a bunch of different angles to see what kind of hidden connections it can find. Okay, so this whole process breaks down into 3 key layers. First up, it looks at the textual context. Then, it just crunches the numbers, the pure math. And finally, it tries to map all of that to some kind of symbolic meaning. Let's break them down one by one. So step 1 is all about context. See, the script doesn't just look at the number by itself, in a vacuum. It connects the pola to where it might show up in the text, to related themes like pilgrimage, and it even whips up these hypothetical interpretations in the style of old-school scholars to kind of ground the analysis. Next, the script gets down to the raw math. It takes that polynomial and just calculates its fundamental properties. Things like what numbers divide into it, if it's a prime number, that sort of thing. This part is just pure objective math. No interpretation here.
So, for example, let's say our pola is the number 237. The script will calculate what's called its digit sum by just adding the digits together. 2 plus 3 plus 7 gives you 12. Simple as that.
And it doesn't stop there. It'll take that 12 and break it down again to find its digital root. So 1 plus 2 equals 3. The goal here is to just keep breaking the pola down into its most basic numerical building blocks.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting. The script takes all these numbers it's generated, the original pola, its factors, its digital root, all of it, and tries to connect them to a deeper, symbolic meaning. It actually cross-references them with a list of the 99 divine names in Islam to see if any of them match up.
And it has 2 main ways of trying to make that connection. First, you've got direct mapping. This is super straightforward. It's when the parallel itself, say the number 28, directly lines up with the divine attribute. But then there's also factor-based mapping, where it's the factors of the parallel, the numbers that divide evenly into it, that link up to an attribute. This creates a much bigger web of possible connections.
Okay, so after all that number crunching and analysis, you're left with a whole bunch of data points. But the final step is really the payoff. It's where all that raw information gets turned into something you can actually visualize. So first, the script just spits out a simple table, kind of like this. It's just a list of connections. You have the source, our pola, 237, the target it connects to, like a theme or a divine name, and the type of connection. Think of this as the raw ingredients, the blueprint for what's coming next. And this is the magic trick. You take that simple text file, you feed it into a free visualization tool, and bam! It automatically reads that blueprint and draws out this incredible network graph. It puts the pola right in the middle and shows you all the connections branching out. It literally turns a boring list of data into a visual story. Let's walk through a real case study so you can see exactly how this plays out with the number 28. The script finds a direct mapping to Al-Qadir, the all-powerful. It also flags that one of its factors, the number 7, is a hugely important number in Islamic rituals. And then on a totally different level,
It identifies 28 as a mathematically perfect number, which is rare, where its factors all add up to the number itself. You see how it's connecting all these different layers? Pretty cool.
And in the end, the script summary for any given number says something just like this. It's the bottom line, right? The framework is suggesting that through this specific numerical pattern, it's revealing a form of that mathani, that divine repetition we talked about at the beginning. Okay, so let's zoom out. What's the big takeaway here? Whether you see divine patterns in this or just some really fascinating coincidences, you have to admit the project itself is pretty incredible. What we're really looking at here is this amazing crossroads. It's the point where the cold, hard logic of open source code meets a deep, ancient theological search for order. It's a totally modern tool being used for one of the most timeless human quests, finding meaning.
And that really leaves us with one final big question. This project uses code to find patterns in an ancient text, but it makes you wonder, what other patterns, hidden right there in plain sight, are just waiting to be discovered? Not just in books, but in the data, the systems, and the world all around us.